Hey, welcome to Remote Play Podcast, and I'm here with Evan, and I'm your other co-host, Mark. Evan, I got a question for you today. What are your thoughts on early access? And no, I don't mean that early access that we've known for a long time where a game's in development and we get to beta test it. That's just called full release now, apparently, with most new games. But what about this trend recently where you can pay extra money to get the game 5 days earlier than other people? Some call it early access, coming from the companies. Other people call it delayed release. And so I want to get your thoughts on that after we jump into the show. All right, we're back, and thanks again, guys, for joining us here on episode 4 of the Remote Play Podcast. Really quick, I'm going to run down the agenda before we pitch it back over to Evan for today's cold open question of the day. For the agenda today, we're going to cover a lot of impressions of a lot of new games. It's a big month, and first off, we'll have Sea of Stars. We'll cover a Super Mario Wonder Direct, Baldur's Gate 3 impressions coming from a PS5 perspective, and of course, the Starfield impressions that we've all been waiting for. And finally, we'll close it out with just what have you been playing besides anything in the above list, which might not be much this week, but most other weeks it'll be a lot. So if you guys like the content we do, make sure to like and subscribe below and follow us on any socials and major podcast platforms. We've also got a cool little Discord server where we got a community growing and we can chat about things, gaming or beyond that. So Evan, I'm going to pitch it back over to you. What are your thoughts on this whole early access thing, delayed release, and where are you coming at in on this?
Sure. Well, a couple big ones this week are Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3, right?
Hmm.
Um, I can say that I bought the premium upgrade for Baldur's Gate 3, right? Or I'm sorry, Starfield.
Yeah,
And
that might explain your
you know,
position.
my thought on it is, a lot of people are like, why would I pay $30 to play this game 5 days early? My thought on it is like, well, you get the expansion with it, right? So you're basically pre-ordering the expansion, and by doing so, you get 5 days early access.
Okay.
Uh, that's how I kind of feel about it. In the sense of I do it. Do I like it? Uh, I would say that if it didn't come with the early access and it was just pre-ordering the expansion, I wouldn't be pre-ordering the DLC or
Hmm.
expansion or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So the early access is the reason I bought it, but I justified it by saying the DLC. Do I like it? Do I not? It feels like it just causes the other players that don't do it, or say a game that I'm kind of interested in. Starfield super anticipated for both of us, so that was a no-brainer for me. Definitely gonna play the DLC, but if it's a game that I'm not sure I'm gonna play, and it's just like I just feel like I'd be getting the game a week late,
Right.
and that feels gross. Like it's
Yeah.
just like this isn't early access. This is the release of the game, and
Yeah.
everybody else has to wait a week to get it,
Yeah.
right?
It's the FOMO
Uh,
factor, right? They're trying to get you with the FOMO.
yeah, and I mean this has been like you said happened a lot this lately. I think it's been happening for a while. I feel like it used to happen with like Battlefield and Call of Duty and stuff like that. But we saw it with Diablo 4 this year. We saw it with um, Baldur's Gate 3 now
Hmm.
that and Starfield. Uh, I'm sure there are others that I'm just not even thinking about. Probably Final Fantasy. I would
Yeah.
just guess, right? Like,
Yeah. It's becoming a bigger trend in the industry, if you will. And so, from your personal perspective, you're thinking if there's value to me and I care about this franchise or this game, then yeah, sure, I'm more apt to do that. And you're okay with that? Or is it just like, hey, this is a wave of the industry that's coming no matter what? I'm just a guy standing in the ocean, and if it works for me in this particular instance, it works. Is that kind of what you're getting at there?
yeah, I think it's not friendly to the consumer. I think it's dumb. I think they should not do it. Shouldn't be a thing. Uh, but like I don't feel so strongly that if it's a game I'm excited about, I'm not going to jump on it. Especially if I'm not actually spending like I'm not going to pay extra money just for early access.
Yeah.
I get if the price of the DLC is going to be the 35 bucks or whatever for Starfield that I'm going to buy, I'm sure anyway. All right. Well, I guess if that gets me the game 5 days early or 6 days early or whatever it was, or a week early, then I'm gonna do it. Like I said, I don't feel strongly enough to not do it.
Right. And so let's put this into perspective, maybe a different perspective. Let's be clear. The game's ready. That is the release date, right? If
Absolutely.
all this aside, they could have launched on in this case August 31st, September 1st, depending where you're at. That's the launch date of the game. They have artificially pushed that back by a week and said, no, that's their full release, but you can get in now, which is really the true release. The game's ready. So it's totally manufactured by the publisher, and not necessarily the developer, but that conglomerate, the company has manufactured that and is finding another way to pay for games that way. I will say just briefly before I pitch it back to you, I have a little bit of me that is okay with this in that if it's going to keep the cost of games from inflating quicker, if there's people out there that want to fund this, which I am one of those people in this case that I did pay that, and we'll dive into that. I'm okay with it. Like if a million people out there want to fund this and keep the inflation of game price down, that's okay with me. But some may argue this is actually inflating the game price anyway and is a bad trend. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's a really good question. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Maybe it's fair, right? Like games already jumped up $10 again. That this generation from that $60 to $70, and if this holds games from going up to $80 for a little
Mm-hmm.
while or something like that, then uh yeah, maybe it is good, right? Like the people that are most excited about the game are going to put that money up. And again, as long as we're saying that they're not paying only for early access, they're getting something for that, but they're just the game publishers are just getting that money up front. And probably in some cases, I'm sure not everybody would be buying that DLC, but because they get to play early, they are buying.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're justifying it. I don't know. Maybe I'll play 150 hours of this game and never get to the point where I've played the DLC. I think I said last episode that I've never played any of the DLCs in any of the previous Bethesda games. Anyway, maybe a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of Operation Anchorage on
Mm-hmm.
and I guess a little bit of New Vegas, but I bought all of the DLCs for all these games, and I barely scratched the surface of any of them because I spent so much time in the base game.
Right.
So maybe I wouldn't have bought that DLC right away because I'm like I'm still playing the base game. But
Yeah, there's a lot of
I
value there, right? So it's interesting in an RPG perspective, like in Larian, Baldur Gate 3, or Bethesda's Starfield, or other games from them. There's already a lot of value there anyway. Now, if some smaller company was doing this, maybe the perspective would change. Um,
yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and I think there's also a lot for Starfield which it's interesting because like we said, there's a lot of publishers doing this, but Starfield's getting this flack saying, oh, like you know, Game Pass subscribers, Xbox, they have their Game Pass subscribers and
mhm.
they're making them pay money. Like I paid for Game Pass, I shouldn't have to pay more money. And it's just like, like
Well, you don't. First off, you don't have to.
you don't have to. Right,
Yeah,
exactly. You don't have to, and you'd have to pay for that DLC. It's not like you're paying extra money
just for the
for
release.
just for that release. Again,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stress probably out of that, but like there's that same mindset. It's just like you're yeah, you paid for Game Pass and you can get it when it comes out. I do get like it says day one Game Pass, and it's just
Mhm.
like, well, actually, I feel like it's day seven
Yeah.
Game Pass
It's not day
because
zero.
it comes
That's
out
for
on
sure.
6, right? For not day zero, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like I think on actually Nintendo podcast of all places they were talking about what is this day -1 then like
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
it's just I don't understand. I paid for Game Pass to get day one Game Pass games, and this is day one. This really is day one, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a fair argument.
And
But
speaking on that,
but
really quick, do you think this will be a trend with more Game Pass games? I was interested in the perspective of this being a Game Pass game and doing this because yes, they've got the Game Pass subs, but they're kind of technically losing out on all the sales the Starfield platform would have, right? Just in early release on PC on Steam alone, there was like 200,000 concurrent players. So those people bought the premium edition of the game and are playing it in that early access period. So there's tons of sales to be had for this game, correct? So if they're all on a Game Pass, that's great. You've got their sub, but you're missing a lot of sales. So is this a way for them to monetize the Game Pass players, and will they continue to do it in the future?
I don't think so. Again, like we said, that this is happening all over the place. It does get like a little special attention because it's like, wait, I'm paying $30 to get a DLC plus early access for a
Hmm.
game I don't even own, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
now, like if I unsubscribe from Game Pass, now I, I have nothing. I can't do anything with that. I have to buy the game in order to play it, so it's a little bit odd, and it's just the first time I think we've seen this with Game Pass that you
Hmm.
can buy this upgrade to get access early to a game, but again, even though you're getting the DLC and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that this will become a trend with Game Pass. I think at the maybe the major releases, maybe we see it with Fable, maybe we see it with um, something like Elder Scrolls 6, but I think this is actually less likely to happen with Game Pass games than it is for other games, just because Game Pass does get those subscribers, so they get that revenue, right? They've got the recurring revenue for what soon I'm sure they'll be saying 50 plus million subscribers to Game
Yeah.
Pass because of Xbox Live, converting into Game Pass Core. And so, they have, I think between, that, they have the active users or whatever, 50 some million or whatever. So they have that revenue, and really they don't want to send this message that like you don't get what's promised with Game Pass, right? Like
Hmm.
the and that's kind of how that some people are receiving that. I think I would say a lot of people are receiving that,
Yeah.
and I don't think Xbox wants to really send that message. So it's going to be maybe for the huge titles, and it's going to come with that DLC, or it's going to come with something specific. And was that the goal? Certainly. I mean, the goal was to get more money out of this game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do though with it being in Game Pass. It's them wanting to sell this game for ultimately $100, and but at $100.
And so let me say this. I'm not a pessimistic or cynical person by nature, but in this view or this point, I'm super worried that this is this generation's horse armor from Skyrim, right? Horse armor came into Skyrim, and then all of a sudden, oh, that was somebody turned the faucet on, right? Drip, 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 and everybody
Are,
else started to turn the faucet, and then there came more microtransactions, right, and normalized the
yeah.
behavior.
Are
And
you saying you think that this is the horse armor for Game Pass doing this, or for the industry as a
the
whole?
industry in this generation, right? So some other people have already doing it, so I'm not blaming Bethesda necessarily, right? So it's already there, but they've dipped their toes in it. And I think Xbox has to be very careful for the points you pointed out and to not turn into a snake oil salesman selling this Game Pass and you're not getting the full thing that you thought you were, right? So my question to you is, do you think, hey, Xbox is altruistic in this? They're not trying to screw anybody over, totally fine. But now there's a cascade effect within the rest of the industry going on, and it becomes completely normalized. Is Xbox the only one that abstains and stays true to their ethics and their customers? And how do you toe that line? Or do they dump in? It's like, hey, everybody else does this. This is totally normal.
When you say only one who abstains, have you ever seen Nintendo do this?
Ooh, no, I have not. Would
I,
Nintendo?
I
Would
don't think
Nintendo do it?
I don't think so. And if they do,
10
it'll
years
be when
later,
it's already on its way out. Yeah,
yeah.
I guess. They'll be like, oh, guess, yeah, we're
We're
doing it
like,
too now. And they're
where'd everybody
like,
go?
no, 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 you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Somebody
but
post a John Travolta meme for this, please.
yeah, right. Yeah. So to say that, like, well, Xbox be the only one, I don't think they'll be the only one. I don't think you'll see it happen on Nintendo. And
Hmm.
and again, I don't. I hesitate to like accept that it would be considered the horse armor. Maybe I don't know. Maybe people will say that because I don't know. People love to hate on Xbox like exclusive. It just seems to be a lot of like flack or whatever. And Starfield being that Xbox exclusive, it's been a lot of like controversies, got a lot of hate. It's been on a really weird, and it's from both sides. You get the Xbox fanboys and the Sony fanboys. The Sony fanboys hating Starfield, blah blah blah. Xbox fanboys just like, like I don't know. You kind of get it on both sides, but like this Starfield has gotten so much attention in the console war
Hmm.
bull crap, like
Yeah.
baloney. But so maybe it will be seen as that. But like we said, you just saw this with Diablo, and for years, right? You've been getting pre-order Call of Duty and get this weekend of early access, or this Battlefield, and you get this weekend or
Hmm.
2 weekends of early access. Go and buy a chicken sandwich, and you can play Diablo 4,
Hmm. Hmm.
for this weekend. So we saw it even last gen, I think, and
Yeah,
I don't know if we saw it prior to that, but
it's definitely on the
it just
uptick, right?
it's definitely on the uptick, and I think because of all the attention Starfield's getting, and because it's an exclusive, I think it gets a lot more attention. Because exclusives just get more attention because they're platform flagship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Really, I think really good thoughts on this cold open question. For the listeners, viewers, I would love to know your thoughts on this because I think it's a very hot topic, and I think people feel very strongly about it, as you just noted. So I'm gonna pitch it over to you. What do we got coming up next? Do you have any follow up stuff? I know we were gonna talk Sea of Stars soon.
yeah. So I did want to ask you a question about Sea of Stars,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of really we're talking Game Pass. It's related to subscriptions. So Sea of Stars launched on Game Pass. It
Mm-hmm.
launched on PS Plus. I think the second tier, the middle tier was
Mm-hmm.
at Premium,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it it seems to be doing pretty well. I think there was like I think it had 100,000. No, maybe it was 100,000 sales on Steam or something, or active players on Steam. So it was 35. It's a $35 game, right?
Right.
That's an expensive or indie. Uh, so we've both been playing it, obviously, and we'll talk about our impressions. And I might ask this question in the frame of would you still, or no, now knowing, but I want to ask you first, prior to release, if this wasn't coming to Game Pass or PS Plus, are you paying 35 bucks for this game
Oh,
to play?
that's a great question. So Sea of Stars. Am I paying $35 to play this game? I mean, look, we'll talk about it, but the game's really good. I mean, when you're
Yeah,
talking
so
about,
that's why I'll ask you again this later when we're going
yeah,
to give our impressions. I'm going to ask you again now that you've played it. Do you see it? Do you think it would be? Would you think it was worth paying $35 for? But we can get to that with our impressions.
yeah, I think it's worth paying $35. Would I? I don't know. I don't, was there enough in the demo to say for me to know ahead of time, like, yeah, I'm gonna pay $35 for this game. This game's gonna rock. And also the timing of the release. Let's be honest, it's right in the middle of a super hot year, one of the hottest months in a long time. And so I probably would not, considering I'm buying these other games like Starfield and Baldur's Gate and soon to be Spider-Man and Super Mario Wonder. Like Sea of Stars, you're amazing, but you're just the bottom tier of that grouping, right? Like you're the low man on the totem pole, so I'm probably not paying for that. But the fact that
And
it's
when you
on
say bottom tier, just the least, like you're not like we got to play
least likely
Starfield
to
because
play it.
Starfield's so anticipated. Baldur's Gate
Yeah.
so anticipated, right? Sea of Stars, not bottom tier in terms of quality. Just the anticipation is just doesn't compare to these AAA games, or Larian is maybe AA or whatever, but Baldur's Gate 3 is a huge, massive game, right?
Yeah.
And because of its release last month, there's just more anticipation for it. More like it just blew the top off the anticipation
Yeah.
because of how well received it was. Which again, Sea of Stars, another well received game, right? But it's just kind of a different. It's the indie JRPG, 25-hour indie JRPG. When we're talking about massive Western 150 plus hour
Yeah.
RPGs,
10,
right?
10, 10 plus years in the making type deal, right? So
Yep.
yeah, it just can't compare fairly during that release time. So no, to answer your question, no, I would not have paid the $35 at this time. If it came out in the spring of next year, maybe I'm more likely to do that when I have more time to dedicate to it. But the fact that it's on a subscription service, well, both of them really, was a huge boon for it, I think. And even off the subscription service, it sold 100,000 copies in the first whatever day, week.
First
Um,
weekend or so. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. First
yeah. So
days.
it did really well off sub too. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's impressive for it. I'm really happy for it. And we'll, I mean, talk about the impressions. Yeah, I agree. I will say there is not a chance I would have paid $35 for that game 2 days before I'm playing Starfield.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I would certainly be waiting for a sale, but I typically, Yeah, I was just thinking like I didn't even know what the price was, and then I was like, what? I was like, that's a $35 game. I was like, holy
Mhm.
cow!
Which is
I was like,
half
that. I
price
mean,
of a
it's
full game now.
right, right. And it's just like I'm used to paying $20 for indie games, and you see a little more. You see more and more going hitting that $25 price point. But I was like, $35. That's a lot. You know, with these subscriptions. So I think we're both playing this on Game Pass, right? You're not
Mhm.
playing this on PlayStation,
Yep.
but so your PS Plus subscriptions are. I don't have a PlayStation, so I wanted to ask you.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, these annual subscriptions, they just went up pretty. They just got pretty beefy price increases.
Mhm.
Does this give you pause on your on whether you're going to renew this? I mean, you probably have, I don't know when your subscription's up, but you're probably not like 3 years in like we are with Game Pass because we did the
Mhm.
conversion promotion. I'll just go over this real quick. The price increase. So the base tier, which is just the original PS Plus, where it just gives you online access
Mhm.
and the games, it was bumped from $60 or $59.99 to $79.99. So that got a $20 price increase, uh, and or 33%.
Mhm.
The PS Plus Extra tier, which is the middle tier that gives you like the greatest hits games or a lot of like the
Yeah, not
you
very
know
classic ones, but just like those PS4, PS3, like you're getting the older
right.
GotY War, The Last of Us, that
Some
type
of
of
the
thing.
PS5 games are now starting to come out there, right?
Yes, they are. Yep.
Things like Sea of Stars. So
Mhm.
that's probably your comparable, like closest to compared to the Game Pass
Right.
type of tier, and that went from $99 a year to $135 a year, or
Mhm.
134.99,
Mhm.
and then the premium with that gives you the old classic titles, the
Like
PS2,
PS1,
PS1,
PS2, yep.
went from 119. You got a $40 price jump to 159.99 a year.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's crazy.
yeah. I mean, are you do you keep your subscription or does it give you pause and like maybe okay, maybe I'll just subscribe when I know I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
How are you receiving this?
That's a great question, and the price increase actually goes into effect when this episode goes live. So if you're listening to it now, the price effect should have already happened on September
September
6th.
6th, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So very quick, very short notice, very quick increase. My first reaction is this increase is very high. It's not like it's like increasing for inflation or something. Like something's going on, and they're just like, "Hey, jack this thing up." That's a huge price increase, and gives people pause. Definitely gives me pause. So I'm on the PlayStation Plus Extra 12-month subscription, the middle tier, and I think I did that in like February. So it'll be coming up soon to renew for sure, and I've thought that it was pretty valuable at $100. I've played a lot of games on there, Ghost of Tsushima, Ratchet and Clank, like the list goes on, right? So I
Mhm.
thought it's been very valuable so far. However, um, this price increase definitely gives me pause, and I would say that there's no secret trick or anything like we did with Xbox where you can get up to 3 years at a time booked in at a super low price. If I wasn't on that for Xbox, I might have pause at certain times as well. I might be doing the on and off again sub thing that a lot of people do with like Netflix or HBO, because I don't know, man. PlayStation, this ain't it with $135. I'm going to be rethinking about how I do this if I do 12 months, if I do like a month to month and just try and crank out some games as they come out. Um yeah, it's tough to see. I'd be really curious to see what our viewers think about this and the increase here. What's your thoughts on that, if any? I know you don't have a PS5, but
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of conversation around like, like with this Game Pass core and all this stuff. And we've talked about it a little bit. It's just like, should Xbox really just like, lead the charge and drop the cost to play online gaming, right? Like,
mhm.
they want to have this Xbox wants to have this synchronization with PC Game Pass, like a PC and Xbox and just like play the Xbox games anywhere and like push this to everywhere. And PC gaming online has always been free. There's never been some added subscription to play
Right.
a game, online multiplayer. And so it feels like there's this desync, right? There's it's not quite synchronized, and there's talking like, like lead the charge. It kind of makes me feel like how we started, because PS Plus or PlayStation used to have free online gaming, and now they're the most expensive option to base, at a base level to play online.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's kind of wild.
That's a great point. That is a great point.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's and now it's kind of like maybe maybe Xbox should kind of lead the charge. I think T-Mobile was the first to go back to unlimited data, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now we're
Mm-hmm.
back on unlimited data, and data caps always seem silly. And I feel like there's been, it kind of became accepted, but like which so did data caps, but online gaming kind of became accepted that you're just paying for it because obviously millions, hundreds of millions of players do it. Uh, but it's just like it's always been like, why should I have to play this game online? I've paid for the game,
Right.
and then I also have to pay to play it online. Like, then what? Yeah. So if I paid for the game, I should be able to play it online as it was built. But so I don't know. Like that. My question, like I kind of wonder, like, what's PlayStation's response if Xbox just comes out and says, all right, now online gaming is free. It's like after they just
Yeah.
increase the price, I don't know. I don't expect Xbox to do that anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the opposite direction you want to see this trend, right?
Yeah.
Especially if that base tier to pay $80 a year, right? When you're used to that $60 a year, like all right, $5 a month. When we talk about Nintendo always does things different. They're like $20 a year, and nobody
Right.
actually pays $20 a year to play Nintendo Online. They pay $20 a year to have access to the retro library, right?
Yep. Yep. It's interesting, and I get that there's a cost for. They do provide services, right? So like you go on PC. Yes, the other stuff is free for voice chat and stuff. Like you can go do Discord or whatever. But Xbox and PS are doing that all themselves, right? So I get there's a cost to run the business. So I just don't know if the best way to monetize this is
But
to
do they?
increase your sub costs.
Yeah, and my question would be, do they need to? We got Discord on
I
Xbox
was
now,
just
and
gonna
I think
say
it's on
that.
PlayStation.
So do you
And it's
embrace
just
that
like,
partnership even more and just all party chats are run through Discord? You can either join a server or it spins up a temporary session.
just open it up, right? Like, all
Yeah.
right, we're no longer like, it's just apps, right? You can get apps on these platforms on PlayStation. You can
Hmm.
get apps on your Xbox, and now Party Chat is just an app that you download, and obviously Discord would be leading the charge there, but
Yeah.
just open it up to be a third party app. You want Party Chat? There's plenty of third party apps to do that now.
They've got to be worried
Yeah,
about the potential loss of revenue. I think if you, the more and more you open things up, right?
a
There's a,
billion dollar. It's $1 billion revenue stream
yeah, and you
for
you open
Xbox,
yourself to a,
right? So I can only imagine it's more for PlayStation.
yeah, and you open yourself to abuse of the system and like hacking and that type of thing. Like the more chances there are, the more likely somebody's going to find a hole and potentially take a big chunk of your revenue away or your value proposition by running hacked games or whatever whatever it may be. So I think
Sure.
we can dive deeper into that on another episode of the podcast because that's a really good topic. So next, do we want to move on to our impressions, and we'll start with our impressions and review format and how we've decided to do that on our show, and then we'll dive into Sea of Stars and go from there. So on our show, we've come up with a review and impressions format that they're kind of tied together, right, Evan, but still slightly different because in impressions it's we're playing a game, we haven't quite finished it for XYZ reason. In the case of Starfield and Baldur's Gate, it's just because they're so massive, right? So we're not going to give you a review that we can't stand behind if we haven't finished the game. And then for a
Right.
review, of course, it's the final thoughts after finishing a game. So really quick, let's go over our impressions and how we do this. So we're going to give you the game details for the impressions. We're going to give you our relevant details. So, how long have we played? What platform do we play on? Any history with the franchise or genre. So, if we're a big homer of this or if we totally despise this type of stuff, and just our expectations going into the game. We're going to give you our initial thoughts just on any tutorials, graphics, story, gameplay loop, the pacing of the game, if it reminds us of other games, because that might help you decide if you want to play this or not, and any standout moments. And of course, we're going to try and keep spoilers out of any of these impressions. And then just any other questions we might have about the game, such as, our expectations being met, anything you're looking for the game to give you as you get deeper or further into the game, and is there enough to hook you to continue to play the game and to beat it will this impression ultimately turn into a review, and then maybe a couple pros and cons of the game in general. And that's it for our impressions. And then on the review side, once we've actually completed a game, we'll give you again the details of the game, the genre, the publisher, who made the game, and what platform it's on. We're going to cover deeply on the story, the music, the graphics, the gameplay loop, the game feel, the time to beat the game or the estimated time to beat it, and any anecdotal positives or negatives we have. And then we will give our final thoughts and our rating. And this is the key part for reviews on our show, is that we're going to be using a tier system. Many people might be familiar with this or with the memes of like S tier, A tier, B tier, so on. We feel strongly about this in that games are an art form, and they are almost never apples to apples. They're almost always apples to oranges, even within the same genre, right? So a Baldur's Gate RPG is not going to be the same as a Starfield RPG, or so on and so forth. They're all very different things. So
Let
um,
alone comparing it to something like Starfield or like even like Resident Evil 4 remake, right? Like
mhm,
very different type of game. It's a
mhm.
remake, like there's so many different types of games that giving number scores just feels off to
Yes, and I think it's an unfair way to grade games, to come in and give Metroid Prime Remastered a 10, and then to give, I don't know, Baldur's Gate 3 a 9.5, for example. Well, you gave Metroid a 10. How did you give BG3 a 9.5? Like, gaming is not black and white as much as the industry and the fan base and the community wants to make it now, like many things in life. It's not black and white. There's a lot of color there. There's a lot of shades of gray as well. So the tier system just says, hey, Metroid Prime Remastered is, let's say, S tier. Baldur's Gate 3 is S tier. Maybe Starfield's A tier or S tier. These games belong in the same
foreshadow
grouping.
report. Yeah.
Yeah, the converse, they belong in the same room or the same conversation, right? So that's why we feel so strongly about this system, and that's why for now, this is how we're going to review. Although we may grow and change as time goes on, and we make improvements to our review system. So going back to impressions, Evan, let's jump to Sea of Stars that we already talked about. And do you want to give us a little introduction about the game as we start our impressions? And we've both played this game, although you've played it a little bit more. So I'll start with you, and then I'll jump in where necessary.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say, this is Sea of Stars by Sabotage. They also did The Messenger. The Messenger was published by Devolver. Sabotage is publishing this game themselves this time.
Oh wow.
It's a top-down JRPG. It's on all current gen, last gen, Nintendo Switch, or current gen, last gen, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC. It's $35, or you can play it on Game Pass or PS Plus,
Hmm.
as we talked about a little bit. Yeah, so those are the details of the game. I jump into how I've played. So I'm about 9-10 hours in. I'm playing on Series X and XCloud through Game Pass. So I've played a little bit on an old Pixel 3 with the XCloud app, or the Game Pass app. Um, and how far are you into this game, Mark?
Yeah, I'm about 5-ish hours out of what we think is a 25 to 30 hour experience. So enough to be past the tutorials and into the story a bit, but not much farther than that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think How Long to Beat has it, like you said, about 25 hours, and then like completionist is like pushing 40.
Hmm.
And then complete plus or beat plus extras is like 30 hours. So I've got like my history with JRPGs is kind of Pokemon I played the crap out of, which is just kind of its own beast. I played some Final Fantasy X, which
Hmm.
is on the Vita, which is a 3D. It just has a different feel to me. I kind of fell off of Final Fantasy X,
Hmm.
and that's a pretty beloved Final Fantasy game. So,
Hmm.
uh, I don't know. I love Pokemon. Gen 1 and 2. And then Breath of Death 7, which was an indie game that was kind of like almost like a parody on a lot of old classic JRPGs. I really had a great time with that. It's been, I don't know, 15 years or so, or 10 years since I've played it. But I really enjoyed that. And then Chrono Trigger, which is a game that Sea of Stars is getting a lot of inspiration from. The original artist that did the soundtrack for Chrono Trigger, I think did a guest song for
Hmm.
this game. So and I have not beaten Chrono Trigger, which is
Oh.
just I think I fell off of it in the wrong time. But I really, really enjoyed what I have played of it.
Hmm.
And I actually, with this game coming out, and I was talking to a buddy whose favorite game of all time is Chrono Trigger. And so I pulled out my 3DS and I started charging it. I have the DS copy of Chrono Trigger, which is a great way to play it in my opinion. But uh, uh, I will be jumping back into that because of Sea of Stars, really. And yeah, so my expectations going into this game were pretty excited. I really enjoyed the Messenger so far,
Hmm.
what I've played of that, and this to me just felt Messenger's kind of hard for me, and it's embarrassing to admit, I guess. I mean, it's a challenging game, and so I when I go to play it, I enjoy it for a little bit, and I have to take bite-sized pieces of it because
Hmm.
I just kind of like, oh man, all right, I'll get to this next checkpoint, and then I just got to put it down. But like this, I had the expectation that I was just gonna. I've been looking for a good JRPG to just kind of sink my teeth into, and just play a little bit, and so I had pretty good expectations. I watched the documentary beforehand and for this game, and it was a pretty great documentary. And I was excited for this game, and I had high
Hmm.
hopes for it. I'm gonna let you cover some of what your experience here is, with the JRPGs, the developer, and what expectations you had going in.
Yeah, sure. So we already talked about how long I played. The platform I played on was also through Game Pass, although I could have played on PS Plus. I just had been playing a lot of PlayStation stuff at the time, so it's time to give my Xbox some love. My history with the franchise or the genre. So franchise-wise, they did the Messenger right. It's not the one-to-one type of game. It's not even a JRPG. It's a platformer. But I love the Messenger. Played it on the Nintendo Switch back near launch when that came out, and beat that game. Very different type of game. Very different type of story and writing in that game, a lot of humor, if you will, and that's not in this game. So I'm definitely a fan of Sabotage, at least in the regard that I like the Messenger. So that was good. And in terms of the genre, I've played a number of JRPGs. I've played way back on the TurboGrafx. I played like Ys 1 and 2. I've played Chrono Trigger and beat that. Golden Sun, all those types of things. Played a lot of those and really enjoy them. And so, yeah, this is right up my alley. It's a beautiful game, and I was looking to see what it could give me. Going into the game, my expectations were pretty high because I was hearing some good things. For the ID at Xbox, that's the independent developers at Xbox like week or conference they had. They put a demo of this game out, and I did play about an hour of that. And then I also had my wife play that as well, and she was enjoying it. And she's not a huge gamer, right? So she was like, "Oh, okay." It was like easy enough. It was a very cool looking game. She liked what she was doing, and I really enjoyed my time too. So my expectations were pretty high going into this game based off of that.
Cool. Yeah. So my thoughts on the game
Hmm.
so far from what I've played, uh, it's given me the hook. I've got the hook. Like if it weren't for Starfield, I would just be the game I just want to keep playing right now. I even with Starfield, I kind of want to just keep playing this game.
Yeah, you're texting me that you're
So
conflicted. He's like, I get a message like every day. I really want to play Sea of Stars, but I'm gonna go to
yeah,
the other
right.
Star game. Yeah,
Yeah, right. The Starfield, Sea of Stars,
yeah.
just but yeah, I'm really enjoying it. There's some things I expected a little more like it's a very pretty game, but I honestly I just thought the messenger looked better. So I just kind of
Mm,
expected this to look better. It
hmm.
looks great. It looks fantastic. And it just I thought the messenger looked better. So it's not quite I would say it fell short, but I mean, I think it still looks great. I had high expectations for that part.
Hmm.
The uh, I think one of my favorite things about the game is Garl. So
So who's
he's like,
Garo?
yeah, so you've got like these two like elemental warriors, or no, it's like a solar warrior and a lunar warrior, and
Hmm.
like they're kind of the main characters of this game. And then they had like at childhood they had their best friend Garl, and he's just this very like high spirits, just happy to be around, and just like just loves life kind of character or
Hmm.
whatever. And I thought he brings a little thing. You said there's not as much humor or something in this stuff in this game. He brings a little bit of humor, and there's
He
definitely,
does.
so you haven't gotten to a part. I played a part today. I play this with my kids around because I'm not
Hmm.
playing Starfield with my little ones.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's a part today where it's like you run into some pirates, and one just totally breaks fourth wall, and they like talk about like, oh yeah, you'll do this and you just hit pause and do this or whatever, and they're like, no, you're not, you don't know what I'm talking about or something like. And it's just kind of, I don't know, they make some pretty good like cheeky humor there.
Yeah, and
Um,
Garo, to be clear, is like he's a muggle, right? To use a Harry Potter reference, like he's super normie dude, and so that's like he's the
yeah.
odd man out, which is kind of his humor, right?
Yeah, and without spoiling anything, but yeah, he holds his own,
Yeah,
but or without spoiling too much, I guess it's a little bit, but
yeah. And so, what are your thoughts on
yeah,
the tutorials then in this game?
um, it felt like it took a little bit to get going, but I mean, you're playing a JRPG. I think it took longer to get going than it needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like it's really not, it's pretty straightforward in a great way. Like it's an intuitive game. Like the controls are intuitive. It's got, the combat is fun, and there's like a little bit of you pick the attack you're going to do, but then you kind of have some reaction to it, and there's some timing elements that are kind of optional. It's kind of like, it makes me think of Hi-Fi Rush, how it's like you can do the you can get the timing right, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not a requirement for the game. You can play through the game without it, but like it just gives you a little extra if you do it.
Yeah, and to be
um
clear, what you're talking about for the listeners is that there's some like Super Mario RPG type elements where there's timing based things. So not only are you selecting your attack like you would in like a Final Fantasy or something, but then when the attacks, certain attacks happen, you can hit the button at the correct time to block and lower the amount of damage you take, or hit the button at the correct time to continue to do more damage, or so on. So there's some rhythm type stuff that's optional, as
yeah,
you said, but is definitely very beneficial.
yeah, absolutely. My favorite is with the lunar one, where she has this attack that it reflects, you're basically playing like ping pong or something,
Mm, mhm, mhm.
with her special attack. And um that's one of my favorite attacks, and I just like being good at that specific attack.
Yeah,
um the music is catchy. The battle music is like,
so good.
it's so awesome. I'm sitting there like humming it and like singing it or what, singing it, whatever, do do in it,
Mhm, yeah, yeah.
like throughout the day. And I'm just like, oh man, which is part of what makes me want to jump back into the game, because I'm
Mhm,
just like, oh, it's catchy, it sticks with you. Like I said, the combat is solid. It's got a lot of, I think it's got a lot of charm. And As far as a few things that I don't, that felt a little short of me, grinding actually isn't really much of an option. There's no
mhm,
random encounters. It's like you run into the specific bad guys that you're going to run into in combat, and
mhm,
then like that's it. I think you can return to the areas and go but the game kind of like levels you up as you want to, or as it wants you to rather, and
mhm,
you don't. So I am, as a Pokemon player, growing up, like as somebody who's played hundreds and hundreds of hours of the first gen of Pokemon,
mhm.
like I often would just sit in the, like the first thing I do before I go to the gyms. There would be several
Grinding.
playthroughs that I'm like, okay, I'm going in there. My Charmander's level, I'm getting a Charmeleon before, and he's going to be level 25 before I go face Brock or
Yeah,
whatever. And then it's just like I can just run through there with Charmeleon and never take a scratch.
yeah. That's your
And
first mistake, fire against rock. Tough gym
yeah,
right off the
well,
rip.
that's why he had to be level 25, right?
Yeah.
With on a Bulbasaur Squirtle playthrough, it's more like level 15. But
Leech
uh,
seed, baby,
uh
leech seed. All right, go ahead.
but yeah, that felt and maybe like I said, I haven't just gone back as much. Maybe that speaks to the game just pulling me forward. I'm just
Mhm,
so like, I just want to keep going forward because I'm interested in what's going on. But it didn't feel, it's not as, without random encounters, without an area to just kind of go in and just get encounters. And maybe my experience with JRPGs, my lack of experience of JRPGs kind of is just ignorant on this part, but like I
mhm.
just kind of wish there was a way to, I wish there was an optional grind,
Yeah,
a little more so, than I feel like I've had. And So I like to set my own pace kind of thing.
right.
And but there are like the relics that like can uh that can give you the option to like make the game a little bit easier or whatever. But to me, that's not like, I want to grind. I want to earn. If I'm gonna go in OP into a
Mhm.
battle, I want it to be because I earned it and I did that grind. Like if I
Right,
feel like
right.
if I just turn a relic on, like I like, oh well, that's just turning easy mode on, and it's like,
Right. And can you explain for the listeners what the relics do and how
yeah.
you
So
obtain them?
yeah, I apologize. Yeah. So the relics are they're like little things that you can collect throughout the game. You start with a couple, and one of
Mm-hmm.
them just is like story mode relic or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
where it doubles your uh, health. I think
Mm-hmm.
it doubles the number of hit points that you have, and you heal after every battle.
Okay.
So you auto heal after every battle, as opposed to going having to go to like a campfire and heal.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so you talked a little bit about like the gameplay and the story and stuff and the graphics. What does this remind you of other games? Clearly, Chrono Trigger's like painted all over the same, but does it remind you of anything else in a good way or a bad way?
Oh man, I off the top of my head, I can't. There's nothing that stands out to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's not anything that it's just like it's screaming like, oh, this makes me think of that. Uh, Other than like you said, Chrono Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Probably some other games if I really sat down and think about it. I don't know why I didn't think about this a little more thoroughly, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any. You have a little more experience with JRPGs, so I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
just bounce that back to you.
Yeah, I think, man, I think Chrono Trigger a lot, and then there's a oh man, there was so many Dragon Ball Z like little RPG games, but there was one on Game Boy Advance that this reminds me of a lot, especially with like the pop-ups, dialogues and stuff, and the different like. So when the characters talk, like their dialogue pops up and it shows like a little pixel art painting of them and their expression, and I think that's really cool. And that reminds me a little bit of some. It's like DBZ Kakarot's Adventure or something like that. One of the listeners may know what I'm talking about, and they can say that. But can I push back on the tutorial bit a little bit
Yeah,
for you? So
absolutely.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think the tutorial right off the rip was pretty good because you start and literally you're going into combat. So I don't think it's a spoiler to say in this game, you have a starting point and you're already the warrior you're supposed to be, like starting this adventure, and boom, you're thrown into combat within like the first 30 seconds, it feels like. And it's like kind of getting you acclimated to the game. Oh, this is how this works. This is a Chrono Trigger style where it's not Pokemon style where you just get a random encounter, right? Like these guys are running around the overworld or the level, and you can literally run away from a fight and not start the fight if they don't make contact with your character.
Mhm.
And then when they do, boom, here's the fight, and here's how this works and the timing stuff and all that. And then a little bit of traversal through the map and learning that there's not just like, oh, that's a ladder, I have to climb the ladder. Oh, that's a walkway, I have to go on the walkway. Like your character will climb and jump and scoot across cliffs and stuff like that. Like the world and environment is very traversable, even though it's a pixel art game and not some modern thing like a God of War or something. So I thought right off the rip they did a good job of teaching that. What I think they did, and maybe what you're alluding to, is that everything else after that was super long in the tooth. So
Yeah.
they go back in time to show you how your characters got from this point as little kids to where you're starting the game, and that is very long and very story driven and dialogue driven, and that felt long, which made the tutorial, as you said, feel very long. But in terms of teaching you to play, I thought it was awesome. It just got really long after that.
That's actually a really good point. I kind of forgot about the initial part where you or start out like where you end up after the tutorial or
Mm-hmm.
after the grow up phase, right? So
Right.
that's a good point. I kind of forgot about that. That was a I think that's probably why it made it feel long to me, because I was like, okay, like let's get going, and then it's like, oh no, I gotta go do this for an hour or two or whatever, an hour and a half before I get back here
Mm-hmm.
and just like once the game started you in that thing, I was just ready to keep going. I was ready to move forward. I was like, wow, this is great. Like and they did just throw you right into combat, and because combat was so intuitive, it just felt like, okay, I get this. I know what I'm doing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
ready to go. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, wait, well, first you got to go sew for years.
Yeah.
And
If you know,
but
you know. You'll find out when you play.
yeah, right. So I think that's kind of what it was, and it wasn't a bad necessarily tutorial. It
Mm-hmm.
was so at least I didn't like hate what I was doing. It was just like felt like there was a lot of dialogue, and it's just like I was ready to get into it, and there may have been a sense of urgency too, because it's like I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get through as much of this game as I could, and really get into the meat of the game as much as I could before Starfield. And I knew I was playing this
Yeah.
for 2 days before Starfield.
Yep. And so to touch on the graphics too, from my perspective, I mean, this game I think is beautiful. I know you were kind of back and forth like Messenger versus this and stuff. This looks like Chrono Trigger, but it also has the benefits of a modern lighting engine and shadows, and I just think it takes it to the next level personally. So if you like Chrono Trigger's art style and you want to see like a modern take on that without destroying what became before it, but building upon it instead, I think this is right up your alley in the graphics department. And
Hmm.
the story seems super interesting. It's a little straightforward at first, but not this. I'm gonna avoid spoilers here, but kind of get the story. There's basically this big bad guy, the Fleshmancer, and your group that you're affiliated with goes out and cleanses the world periodically. And so you're like, okay, typical hero story. But then as you get further, and you'll know this more than me because you've probably seen it more, but there's a little cutscene that drops in, and it's like, oh, okay, that's a twist. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And then you're
Yep.
hooked. And I'm assuming these hooks keep coming as you go through the game. So the story seems pretty good so far, and the pacing, other than that long tutorial, seems good too.
The worst thing about those cutscenes is that they're not longer and there's not more of them.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah,
They're great when they show up, and it's just like, oh, and then you're like, wait, come back. And I wish there's some voice acting and stuff to it, but I mean,
yeah,
it's a very small indie game, so for it's a big game for the small indie studio that put it out, kind of thing. So
right,
and so I think just those are things you don't necessarily get. I will say on performance, so I'll speak a little bit to the xCloud performance that I've had. So this
sure,
is a very your mileage may vary type of thing, depending on what you're playing in or speeds and everything. uh figured this would be a pretty good game to try out. There's not a super any kind of like latency or like perfect perfect timing that you really have to have for this game, aside from like I said, that optional combat pieces. But
hmm,
I played it. I had some frame skips, and it's just to me, I see it as like this is super playable. This game is super playable, but I'm like, xCloud is just still not where I need to be for most other games. This
hmm,
is the experience that is playable on xCloud.
okay,
But yeah, I'll go ahead and get into my expectations because I want to keep moving along here.
yep, yep,
Uh, but I expect this to be definitely a game I'll finish. I'm gonna keep playing, and I think I'm sitting with my experience right now. I'm at an A tier, and I think I I I expect it to stick unless something really wows me later on. I kind of expect it to stick right there. I don't. I think there's a better chance that it goes up than it goes down, though.
okay. Yeah, and I'm enjoying the game a lot so far as well. I'm gonna imagine this game is going to land in the A tier for me, but uncertain. We'll see when we get through it. The one negative I have is just that the timing of those rhythm based things is a very tight window, I feel. So sometimes it's very hard to learn. And you got to kind of learn by doing because each enemy is different and has different animations, almost like you would learn a boss in Dark Souls or something like, oh, when he goes to wind up, that's when I should be doing X, or, in this case, pressing the button to block or pressing the button to attack again. So it
Mhm.
feels a little too tight and sometimes a little too punishing. And I'm curious to see as the game progresses, especially in the late game, if it becomes necessary because the blocking is super key, I think. Like it stops a lot of damage. You can win fights as in my experience right now without it, completely optional like you said. But when you get into some like late game boss fights, I'm curious if it becomes necessary.
Yeah, and I'll say I feel like it's super tight. That's a good point. The blocking feels like you said tight, but also
Mhm.
I, it's really hard to understand exactly when to do it.
Yep.
For me at least, so like because it is very enemy specific, and when your bosses are all unique, it's just like, oh wait, I is this when I do it, like in learning it. And then yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our impression on Sea of Stars, and we have a couple bigger ones coming, but we want to cover the Mario Wonder Direct
Mhm.
before we go into the into Baldur's Gate and Starfield. There was a big Mario Wonder Direct. It's first uh 2D Mario here in a while. New 2D Mario game, not to be confused with New Super Mario Brothers, which is, but
Greatest naming ever.
gosh, they loved the word new there for a little while with the new 3DS and everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, so this is a our first really fresh take, I feel like, on a 2D Mario in like decades. Aside from Super Mario Maker, like where other people are creating the Mario game, the meat of the game. Uh, um, yeah. So you want to cover some of the details on this, Mark? About what was in the direct, and then we can kind of discuss a little bit thoughts on it and
Yeah.
impressions.
Yeah, totally. So I think they had like a 20-ish minute direct the other day where they covered just this game. And so again, 2D Super Mario, as you said, looks like it's doing a lot of cool new things. Kind of the highlights of this direct and what's going on in this game is that there's this caterpillar. He's a Prince Florian, and he's in the Flower Kingdom, and his castle's been overtaken by Bowser, and he wants the power of the Wonder Flowers to basically kind of dominate, do Bowser things, take control, yada yada yada. There's these 7 overworlds or areas or biomes, and very reminiscent of like a Super Mario 3 in a way. So you can travel to these, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But there's like a sand one, an ice one, and so on, and there's levels within these biomes. And that overworld allows you to play the levels in any order you want. So that's a key detail. So you don't have to go to world 1-1. I could go to world 1-4, or level 1-4 rather, if I wanted to. And there's animation and like an actual screen where you're running around with your characters and picking where you're gonna go. The talking flowers in this game, we'll touch on this in a second because you and I differ in our opinions on it, but they've added voice acted talking flowers in this game that don't seem to add anything but flavor to the world. If it's a good flavor, bad flavor, I don't know. 12 playable characters in this, which is interesting. Half of those are Yoshi's and Nabbit, and the Yoshis and Nabbit are a little bit different in that they do not take damage and they do not get power ups. So it's kind of like that handicapish mode where you can hand a controller to a little kid and say, "Hey, you want to play with daddy or mommy or your brother or cousin? Here you go. You can be the Yoshi. You're not going to die. We don't have to. You don't get upset about this. You can still experience the game and learn to play, which is cool." 3 new power ups. You can turn into an elephant. There's a bubble power up and a drill power up. The drill's kind of interesting because you kind of jump into the ceiling or the floor and move in there, almost like Splatoon in a way for Mario.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of become part of that environment and move around. And then the Wonder Flowers in this game alter the levels and the enemies and so on in the environment in a very funky way. So if you've seen the trailer or the direct, like all of a sudden warp pipes are going up and down everywhere, shooting water. A warp pipe turns into a giant inchworm and is like scooting across the level. Just really wacky stuff that should be super fun, I think, to experience. There's a badge system in the game, and this allows you to basically get coins and points to get these badges that give you new abilities for your characters or add extra challenge to your game. And then finally, on the multiplayer side, there's 2 different aspects. So you do have 4-player local co-op, which is great. I think there was a lot of question about this and the online play when certain leaks were coming out. And then for the online play, you're not going to be playing with people directly, but you'll see live shadow players um, playing at the same time as you, and they can assist you, kind of like in like a Souls game, for instance, or any of those that where you can leave things behind, or they can set up like a standee, which is like a checkpoint. So if you die, or sorry, you don't die in Mario, but if you fail and you're on the ground, like they
You
can,
turn into a ghost.
yeah, so they can revive you. Okay,
That's
so
dark for a Mario
yeah, it
game.
is. Yeah, they could revive you or send you back to this standee as a checkpoint, right? So that's kind of the online play. So that's what they covered in the direct. The game looks super cool. Comes out here in October. I'm pretty excited about it. What are your thoughts on this game briefly before we go on to Baldur's Gate and Starfield?
Yeah, so I've never been super excited about 2D Mario games. I beat the original Super Mario Bros. The Super Mario Bros. Deluxe version on Game Boy Color.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've beaten it on it, but the Super Mario Brothers is the only 2D Super Mario game I've beaten other than Super Mario Maker
Okay.
2. And um, so I'll say, with that said, this is probably the most excited I've been about a 2D Mario. But it's just not a very high bar. The what I want to see more of, and I felt like I didn't see enough of, even though the second half of the trailer or the direct was about those wonder flowers. That looked awesome. I love the way like it just totally just flipped. I mean, at times literally flipped the game,
Mm-hmm.
on it, on its side or whatever. And um, as well as I did love those talking flowers. That
Oh.
talking flowers, that voice acting is the sweet nectar, and I am
Mm-mm.
of those flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was great. It added charm, added some added life, like made the game feel a little more lively. But and I'm just gonna keep going and not let you speak on it at all. And but some of the new abilities, they look cool. I mean, we got new abilities in new Super Mario Bros. Like Giant Mario and stuff like that. And it's just like well, I thought the bubble was pretty cool. I think the elephant's neat. The water, like the water in the trunk, I thought was neat. But really, this game, I think for me, is going to live and die by the experience with those wonder flowers, and really how much ingrained in the game it is. And hopefully the game is called Mario Wonder, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're wonder flowers. This is a very key thing that they're pushing, but it's just like it was only half the direct, and it's like I want that to be 95% of the
Yeah, and
direct.
maybe they're holding that back, right? Because like that's kind of
Right.
that's the juice, right? So you got to get in there and do the
Right. I mean, we
squeeze.
didn't see the depths and tears of the kingdom.
Yeah.
So Nintendo is known to hold back significant pieces of their games that they know are going to sell. And frankly, I mean, 2D Mario, it's going to sell.
Oh yeah, totally. I can tell how excited you are by like how close you got to the mic. Like you're like, I don't know, Mario's a low bar, but you're like up in there, and so
Right.
he's pretty excited about these talking flowers. So the talking flowers will make or break the game for me. Look, they were just kind of annoying to me. I thought it was cool that it was voice acted. It added that flavor, but I don't know if it's the right flavor. It was just like random chitter chatter things or tutorial things. And I am a guy, look, I know it's a Nintendo game. It's for everybody. Totally fine with that, but I'm a guy that likes a challenge as well. So I just find like, "Oh, did you know you could jump up there? Look at that block." Like literally something akin to
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
in the trailer. I'm like, I don't need that in my life. You want to say some funny or witty things or like Marvel MCU type like comedic lines, I'm okay with that. I can live with that. But as soon as you start telling me like, did you know the A button's to jump? Go for it. Like I don't need that in my life. So we'll see how it is, right? I can't judge a book
That's,
by its cover. We'll see how it is when it comes out.
yeah. If there's one type of game I do like to be super hard in my life, it's 2D platformers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can kind of understand that. I like the platforming itself to be tight, but I do like the figuring out, I need to get there and stuff. There's
Right,
so I can understand, like I don't want these hands. I don't want this hand holding.
right.
I want to play the game. I don't want you to tell me
Yeah.
how to
Have some
play the
confidence in
game.
me, right? Like when they do that
Right.
sometimes. Again,
Yeah,
Nintendo games
but
are for everybody.
and especially 2D Mario, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like this 4-player co-op, it's because it's like you're playing, mom and dad with the two kids are
Mm-hmm.
playing Mario.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, I mean, I'll be playing, if I'll probably end up getting this game at some point. I have
Mm-hmm.
a couple other Mario games but it's like that's what I play with my family. As I play these Mario games. I play
Mm-hmm.
Kirby games, right? And um yeah, so
Yeah, and I think it looks good,
uh,
guys. Really, like they look like they're attempting to innovate. So this is like the opposite of what Game Freak does with Pokemon, right? So instead of sticking, they could have just done another plain Jane 2D Mario, or like done another Super Mario Brothers U whatever, like that kind of the same type of thing over and over. And you can only innovate so much within a 2D platformer, and I think they're attempting to do it here. So kudos to them, and I think it'll turn out good. We'll see.
yeah, I really think Game Freak should take some hints. Uh
Don't they talk to each
It's
other? Aren't
okay.
they? Don't these two companies
It's
talk?
okay to innovate on your flagship franchise
Yeah.
now and then. Yeah, but also a part of that direct,
Hmm.
we got a new Switch revealed.
Oh, I did forget to
The
mention
new
that.
the new Switch. No,
Yeah.
a really cool. I think it looks great. The red. I love the solid red. There's like it's a little bit different. The original Switch had a because this is the OLED model.
Hmm.
The original Switch had a Mario edition as well. I love those red Joy-Con. And I love the red dock. That red
Yeah.
vibe. I think it looks really cool. I'm like, gosh, if I didn't already have three Switches, maybe I'd be considering this. But no, I don't think really, because yeah, I'm waiting for that next Switch, and I gotta save money for next year's
Yeah, it
Switch 2.
it does look pretty badass. I gotta be honest, like that crimson red color. It's got some like little secret coins in the back panel and stuff. So yeah, it looks super cool. Hopefully, Nintendo in the next gen has some type of thing akin to what Sony and now Microsoft are doing, where you can kind of put shells or covers on your console to at least decorate it, so you're not missing out. You're not getting that FOMO of, man, another special edition. I love the red. I love Mario, but I already own a Switch. So how can I justify paying 300 and having another Switch when I already have the Zelda one and the regular one or the Switch Lite? So
Yep.
hopefully they do that in the next gen. Kind of respect the consumer and like, hey, we get it. here's the special edition, but also here's a way to decorate your Switch in a special way or something.
Sure. Yeah, and you probably have a good chance of selling. Mario movie came out, and maybe a lot of families have their 4-year-old that this is the first
Mm-hmm.
exposure to Mario. They saw this Mario movie, like, oh my gosh, Mario's so cool, and then they don't have a Switch because it's like their kids are just kind of hitting that age where they might be playing video games, and so I can see that. All right, Christmas, we're getting this Mario Switch with Mario Wonder, and
Yeah.
we're gonna have a great time.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect for them. They know all the marketing demographics that they have, right? So, anyway, we want to jump over to a very short session of Baldur's Gate 3 impressions before we dive into our main topic on Starfield. You cool with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanna hear your thoughts because
I was gonna
we
pitch
know
it.
it's now coming to Xbox.
I was gonna pitch it to you. What are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, right. So this is Baldur's Gate 3, released on PC last month,
Mm-hmm.
and that was August 1st,
Mm-hmm.
August,
Mm-hmm.
early August. It's already out on PC.
Mm-hmm.
So and early access launched August or September 3rd.
Yep.
For Baldur's Gate 3 on PS5,
Mm-hmm.
and the full release on PS5 is September 6th, right up there against day 1 or day 6 with Starfield, however you want to frame it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then coming to Xbox this year, which we found out when an interview with Phil Spencer and Larian came out and said that it will be coming to Xbox this year. So I look forward to playing it then.
Yeah, this late this year or the next year. Yeah, so I picked this up on PS5. We talked about at the top of the episode the early access thing. I did do that. In this instance, maybe it wasn't as worth it as the Starfield one because it was basically the digital deluxe version of this game. There's no physical, by the way, no physical version of this game. You buy the digital base game or the digital deluxe. I couldn't even tell you what the digital deluxe came with. Maybe some like soundtrack or something, but it came like extra days early, right? That's X amount of days early. That's what I was interested in. That's what I paid the extra $10-15 for. So even though I'm against the streak, like I'm very um what's the word you want to say here? Basically, I'm not following my own advice, right? I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. I don't like this trend as a whole, but I'm so excited about BG3 and playing with my wife and the co-op and PS5 that we got it early so we could play over the weekend. It's a long holiday weekend at the time we're playing
Yeah,
these.
it's not like you had anything else to play, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, Starfield too. So which
I'm just kidding.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll talk about in a bit, but so just to touch on the game here, there is 2 performance modes on the PS5. I know that's a hot topic for everybody. Like, hey, how does it perform on a console, especially in split screen? So there's a performance mode that's 1080p upscaled to 1440p and is targeting 60 frames. It's not locked at that frame rate. I think it frequently goes down to like 40 to 50. There's a quality mode that is rendered at 1440p but is 30 frames per second, and it's closer to locked, but it's definitely not locked on that. And then obviously the resolution scale down a bit as you do a split screen. And we've only done split screen with 2 people. I would imagine you can do it with more than that. But yeah, just the 2 of us. It's a vertical split screen. And much like their previous games, Divinity, Original Sin 1 and 2, you can free roam your own, which is great for my wife. She doesn't want to be beholden to me and what I do, or I lead the way. She's doing her own thing. I'm often catching up to her as she's talking to people and doing this. I'm like, hey, wait, what's going on over here? Um,
Blew my mind the first time I experienced that in Divinity Original Sin 2. It
yeah,
was I was like, this is what every co-op RPG, like this is the experience I want in my life.
yeah, this is next level. Like when we talked about back in the day, your Fallout 3, your Skyrim, whatever, like, and we would sit next to each other on 2 different TVs and play or talk to each other online when we couldn't be together. And it was like, man, if we could just play if they made these co-op, that'd be incredible. But how would you do that? We're each doing our own thing, and boom, here it is, Larry. And yeah, you both are
Yeah.
playing together but apart and can do your own thing. It's so cool. So yeah, how we played or how I played in my instance again on PS5 split screen, and my initial thoughts on the game are that this game is incredible, absolutely incredible. Right from the opening cutscene, they kind of throw you into this world and what's going on. It looks like a beautiful, beautiful fantasy slash sci-fi movie. Yes, I said sci-fi because there are different planes of existence in the Dungeons and Dragons world, so you're kind of traversing some of these different genres, at least at the beginning in the cutscene. Then you go into character creation, what we would call session 0 in D&D, which could take a whole night if you were to do this in a normal D&D. So my wife and I took about an hour and a half, to go through and create our characters. It does allow you to create them at the same time, so you create them in split screen, which was cool. It wasn't like, hey man, wait for me to make my character, then you can come in and make yours. We got to do it all at the same time. You go through, you pick your race, your sub race, your class, your background, your traits. It has tooltips for all of this and what it does, what spells you're going to take with you, what kind of badass stuff are you doing, like can you call a familiar, all the stuff that's in D&D 5th edition. If you've ever played that, that's exactly what this is based on. And then of course you get into the cool part, which is how does your character look. So I'm playing a drow ranger, or dark elf, as some would call it, ranger, and she is playing as an elven, oh man, she's gonna kill me if she listens to this, hold on, a fighter. She chose a fighter, so an elf fighter, which is more of like, think like UFC fighter. Like they'll still use weapons, but it's just like not total barbarian, which is another class where there's like hack and slash. But yeah, in there and fighting and tossing people around and shoving them. So a number of times in the game, she's like run up and she like whoops ass on a guy, and then is like, "Hey, do you think I should shove him or throw him away from us?" I'm like, yeah, 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 do that. And then you see this character just get thrown across the map, and it's like, cool, now he can't hit us. Like that's so awesome. So my initial thoughts, to round that up, is just that I'm looking to dive more into this game. We played about maybe 4 to 5 hours total, including the character creation. Really excited about the story. The performance is pretty good, especially considering split screen. Like it's rendering everything twice and using all that memory. We're able to do it again. Able to do our own thing. No major bugs. There is one little bug I noticed is like some of the tutorial stuff doesn't show up, so we had to figure that out ourselves. But other than that, it performs pretty well with minimal hiccups, and we're able to play just fine. So, do you have any other questions or thoughts on this game as you're looking forward to it coming out on Xbox? Story I can give. We had a hilarious moment, two moments. So we had one blunder by me and one blunder by my wife. So we're doing our thing. We're recruiting party members because you can have up to 4 in the party, and there's other like key NPCs, if you will, and you can recruit them or send them to your camp. And so we do that. We go into this like cathedral, and if you don't know, this game is anything goes, right? Just like D&D. Like, oh, I see there's like a crack in the floor. I wonder if I could somehow break that open. Maybe there's something under there. And then you see like, oh wait, look, there's like a bell up there. Maybe if I shot an air, like we were literally talking this out in real time. Laura's like, how do I do that? Like, how are we gonna get that thing to fall? I'm like, well, maybe if we shot an arrow at the rope, do you think it'll let us do that? Boom, shoot an arrow at the thing, it breaks it, it falls down, there's a hole in the ground. Like, it's just so cool and rewarding to think outside the box and how to play. It's not just a hack and slash like Diablo, right? Although it can be at times if you want it to be. It literally is what you want it to be at any given moment. So we jump down in this hole, like, let's see what's down here. Maybe there's some treasure. Ton of guys already down there, bad guys looting stuff, and like, hey, what are you doing here? Got our butts kicked like 3 times over. So we end up having to reload a save earlier, and thus we learned about save your game often. That was a valuable lesson that we learned there. So that was super interesting, just that interaction with the environment. And then the second one is we got through all that. We proceed further into the game. We find like an encampment with people that are friendly, and we're talking to them and stuff. And I'm off doing my thing, and you get notifications on your side of the screen for like when a player does a key action or has started talking to someone, and it's like, X player is going to jail. I'm like, going to jail? And she's sitting right next to me. I'm like, what did you do? And I'd like start to look at her. She's like, I just picked up a sword. Like, did you just steal something? No, it just said take. I'm like, you stole something. And to be fair, normally when you stealing, it does say steal as the
Like
action.
Steel.
Yeah. So, but anyway, she stole something. She tries to talk her way out of it. She tries to intimidate her way out of it. She failed every check because it does a little dice roll, right? Like, oh, you have to roll a 10, and you get your pluses and minuses. So she gets thrown into a makeshift jail. I come down there, I'm trying to break it open. I can't break it open. I find a lockpick, and I'm like, all right, this is it. Let's do it. Again, duh, we didn't save the game before we picked up this lockpick. And so I roll for the lockpick. I have a super high chance of getting this. Boom, failed it by 1 point. Could not break her out of the jail. We're just like, what do we do now? like like you stole a sword, got thrown in
What did
jail.
we do?
Yeah, and so we just end up having to reload a save a little bit earlier than that, which does suck in a way, but it's just hilarious, right? Like these hilarious moments. That's why you play these games together. And I know this game is going to be packed with tons of these, as it's like expected to take over 100 hours to beat, right? So that's my
Yeah.
two stories for this game, and I'm looking forward to having more of them.
would you say, I've played again Original Sin 2,
Hmm.
and so I'm trying to like, is this just that, but strictly an evolution in D&D themed?
Um, Early
Because
on impressions, I
like,
would say yes. I would say
yeah,
it's not like, oh, let's just take our game
because
and
it's more
slap a pane
third
of code on it.
person than isometric now,
Totally.
right?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
more.
Yeah, and so you can change your camera the whole time. And so she was struggling with that a little bit. Like it was almost like she had stick drift. I'd be like playing, and I see her screens like zooming out and spinning. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm trying to figure this out, But yes, it's third person only. You can zoom it out to where it's like a top down, like almost RTS or CRPG style. Or you can zoom it into where almost like a Starfield or Skyrim where you have that third person camera view. That's kind of how I play normally when I'm running around. It's over my shoulder and I'm doing my stuff. And then when I want to see more, we're doing a fight, we zoom out and do it that way.
So the zooms, to me, it sounds like it kind of scrolls like Age of Empires or something, but maybe a little bit closer. Like how it
Yes.
has like, yeah,
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 closer and more freeform, like right. You can do a whole
yeah,
360.
yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, super, super good. And yes, it's basically Divinity Original Sin 2, everything you loved about that, plus extra with the D&D rules and theme, which is like chef's kiss on that side, right? So it's marrying two amazing things together. This game is, I imagine, will be in my S tier when I do a review finally. Um, bar any like game breaking bugs or anything like that. But yeah, it's just incredible.
I, I mean, it's good that it for me that it didn't come out on Xbox right now because it's like I'm not. I wouldn't be playing it. I can't do those side by side. But with Starfield.
Right.
Eh, but yeah, I'm excited that it's just like they work things out with Xbox. Larry and work things out with Xbox because uh, this sounds like it's coming sooner than later, right?
Right.
There was a lot of uncertainty as to when it was coming, and they said they're pushing to get it out this year. They're expecting to have it out this year. So perfect. Give it to me November timeframe.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So let's jump over into our main topic, the Starfield impressions. So Starfield, this is the big release of the year, if I could say that, in a year of big releases, right? And so this is an open world exploration Western RPG that's on Xbox, PC, and Game Pass, really, right? Included in there. It's from Bethesda Game Studios. It's a $70 game, or if you have it on Game Pass, you can get it there. We talked at the top of the show about there was an early access period where you could pay essentially $30 or so to get the DLC that's going to come out eventually, as well as the early access. So the early access was kind of thrown in there with that. And this is one of the main reasons that Xbox bought ZeniMax Bethesda, correct, to get this game, make it an exclusive game, and have it on both Xbox and PC. So that's the details of the game. Let's
Yeah.
maybe cover it. How? Go ahead.
So yeah, so it was because there was a lot of rumors that it was going that Sony was trying to put up a deal to get exclusive to PlayStation.
Right.
So it Phil said, Daddy Microsoft, hey, can I have $7 billion to keep this from happening? Instead of getting an exclusive rights, they're like, we'll just buy the publisher.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy. And I don't think a lot of people know about that because there's a lot of complaints about, well, you made Starfield exclusive. I wish I could play it. And it's like, well, they were going to do the exact same thing, not necessarily by the company, but they were going to
okay
keep it
when
from you.
Sony.
Yeah. Yeah. Sony's super bad about that, I think. I get it. Like exclusives are part of
Final
the
Fantasies.
how you build your brand, but they do it all the time with either console exclusives or timed exclusives. And it's just not fair to the player. In any case from anybody, but they do it a lot. So
Well, they had to buy Activision too. They kept getting those Call of Duty deals.
yeah, totally. Totally. So how we played the game, hours played, I think I'm about closer to 15 to 20 hours in. I'd have to actually, check the exact time. I'm playing it on my Xbox Series X. History with the genre, I love Bethesda games. Fallout 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. Love Skyrim, played tons of hours of that in college on my Xbox 360. My temperature or climate on this type of game is I love it. If you give me this big world and I can dive in and you hook me in, totally all about that. And my expectations going into this were sky high. I think I told you in text, like, hey, I'm predicting 92 on Metacritic. I don't know where it's at now, but I know it's like in that high 80s area. So maybe it's falling short, so to speak, in that regard, but that was my expectation. So over to you. How'd you play? What were your expectations? That type of thing. And then we'll dump into impressions.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've played about 16-ish hours. Um, on the Series X through
Mhm.
Game Pass, with the Game Pass premium upgrade or whatever.
Mhm.
And my history with Bethesda games and really Western RPGs is pretty much Bethesda and Cyberpunk 2077.
Mhm.
Um, eh, yeah, I Fallout 3. So my first exposure to Fallout 3, I feel like let's say I was in a cocoon as a gamer, and Fallout 3 was me blossoming into a beautiful butterfly. But in my exposure to Fallout 3 was you came over and you were at my house and we were in our first year of college, and I just sat and watched you play for like 2 days, Fallout 3, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And this was like leading into like finals week of our first semester of college, and so we finished up finals. I went and bought an Xbox 360 and some games, Fallout 3 being the focus, and I um I bought it and I played 60 hours in a week. And it was this perfect storm. First winter break, college break was kicking off. My parents were, because I was living at home at the time, my parents went on vacation and I sprained my ankle. So it was just like I had nothing to do but play this game.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like for a while, I put it as my favorite game of all time. Because of just that experience I had with it. So I love Bethesda RPGs. I've played a ton of that. I know Obsidian did Fallout New Vegas, but there's
Mhm.
like that one, Skyrim, and Fallout 4. Fallout 4 I was playing a week ago.
Mhm.
So um yeah, so super a ton of experience with this, and this is a very very beloved. I can't say franchise, but Bethesda's RPGs are they have a feel to them. If you love them, you love them,
Mhm.
and I love them.
Mhm.
So that is my history with this type of game.
So you're not biased at all. We're good.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. My expectations, obviously, going into this game, exceptionally high. The star exploration, the sci-fi, like space theme, I would say, or setting is not compared to the fantasy setting of Elder Scrolls and the uh, apocalyptic wasteland setting of Fallout. I would say, this is probably my least. This definitely my least excited, exciting setting to me. I would put fantasy and post apocalyptic at some of my top settings, and this one is doesn't crack the top five for me, I think.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
not that I don't have any interest in it, but like it doesn't the setting itself doesn't bring a whole lot of excitement. There's things that are cool about it, but
Mm.
it's not like I'm opposed to it. But
Okay.
so yeah, and but aside from that, like I expected to go into this and just be like feel like a Fallout in space with a little more life kind of going, for it, because Fallout is a wasteland and it's like zombies and mutants and all this stuff, and I just expected it. I was like, okay, like let's bring some actual like humanity in here and maybe some aliens or whatever.
Mhm.
So that was my expectations going in.
Okay. And so right
Um,
off the rip, let's just start. Does this game have the hook? We know it's the Bethesda game. Does it have the hook?
for the first like honestly 5-6 hours, it didn't have it for me.
Okay.
I was like, man, I just want to jump back into Sea of Stars. Like,
Mm.
and so yeah. So that I mean that's really where it was. Now, hour 7 or 8, you start feeling it. It just starts sinking in a little bit. And I talked about like Sea of Stars having a feeling like the tutorial dragged on. Uh I think the expectation going into a game, okay, this is going to be a game that hundreds of hours can go into. It makes sense that I have to, you just know you're gonna have to put some time into learning. There's so much to learn in this game.
Mhm.
CSR is super simple and intuitive.
Mhm.
Starfield, not.
Right.
And we'll get into it being whether how it is in the intuition or whatever
Yeah. How
the
intuitive it
controls and
is.
the
Yeah.
UI and all. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say I think I totally agree with you. I think the hook is there, but it's not there at the beginning. Whereas in other Bethesda games, it's like right away. They throw you in and you're going, right? And here there's so much going on, so much to learn that the pace in the beginning feels kind of slow, but then the hook comes in.
Yeah.
I may say like an hour earlier than you, but I'm pretty much on point with you here.
Yeah, I listened to was that Xbox Two or the kind of funny like a Gamescast review or whatever in the game. I can't remember which one it was, but one of them talked about how they're like, uh, in Fallout, you step out of the vault and you have that wow moment. In
Mm-hmm.
Skyrim, or like or Oblivion, you step out of that that jail cell or whatever that
Mm-hmm.
dungeon, and and it didn't really feel like there was quite that moment to me, and that's what that comment was, and I was just kind of I agreed with it, uh, which is interesting because it's more massive than any of those, right? Like you would
Mm-hmm.
expect that, like, holy crap, I'm stepping in. Uh, I guess the closest thing to it was when you go to a different solar system and you're like, oh, like I have to first off, I have to jump to another solar system to get to another solar system because that's how massive this is, expansive it is. But you can never really grasp because you can't see how from any given point. You just see the planet that you're on,
Mm-hmm.
which is isn't some massive thing that you can see to look at, where what it is just like that happens 1,000 times, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
over 1,001 planets or whatever in this game, so it's really hard to like get that visual representation of how massive, how large this game
Yeah,
is.
because there's not a door, right? Like it's a space game. There's not just a door you walk out and you're like, wow, look at this amazing place, this amazing land, environment. It's like, no, no, the scale of this game is so large that for you to understand the scope of that, you got to get through the game a little bit to get a ship to go to another planet, another solar system, as you said. And that's the wow moment. And it's not at the beginning. It literally can't be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. And on that note, the talking about the solar system and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the map navigation in this game, awful. I hate it. So there, it's funny because like the fast travel, it has some really cool things with the scanner that you and like just going into the missions, and you can set fast travel points, which make the fast traveling that part I like about the fast travel. But like if
Mm-hmm.
you try to just do it the traditional way of these Bethesda games, go to the map and just click on there's not just a map with the points of interest on it. Like there, it's I'm gonna just say terrible map system. I don't even want to call it a map system. It's more like a planetary. There's no points of interest, and for me, uh, what I love, the way I've played Bethesda games in the past is the points of interest. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You see that hollow icon pop up on the compass or whatever that you have when you're playing a Fallout or Elder
Mm-hmm.
Scrolls game, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go there, and like I can't leave any of those undiscovered when I play those games, and then I go to the location, and if it's a cave or dungeon or whatever, or some kind of or like building that like I have to get that cleared marker, and it's just like I don't you don't have that in Starfield. Uh, so that's kind of like a lot of people are like, oh, if and we even said it ourselves. I said it myself just a minute ago. Like if it is a Bethesda game, but it is the most different Bethesda game from any Bethesda game I've played, while still having that. There's a lot that it has that I think a lot of people love about Bethesda games, but there's some of the things that I love about Bethesda games that just seem to be missing.
Yeah. And I'll say, I'll push back on it a little bit. I know the map thing is not great, and I think what they were going for is that they want you to explore, right? And I think the use is supposed to be through the scanner. That's where you're getting those points of interest and stuff like that. And I don't think it's as intuitive as they would have liked it to be, and I don't think the tutorial is good for it at all, or if it's even existent at all. We were texting each other a lot, like, "Oh, how do you do this? How do you do that?" Texting our other buddies, like, "Oh, I found out this." We're posting to Reddit. Go check it out on the Xbox Series X sub. Shameless plug,
Or the
but
YouTube short.
yeah, the YouTube short as well. And just how do you do things? And I don't necessarily think that speaks to the poor execution maybe of their vision. I don't think their vision was flawed. I think it's a very different game being in space and you want that sense of exploration. Todd Howard talks about that a lot, but I just think the execution maybe was not the best. And I think that's giving you the type of feeling that you're having about the map and stuff. And I have that feeling a little bit as well. So
Yeah, and I think part of the vision that they had was that they wanted players communicating, right?
mm,
Like with each other. Oh, how do you do this? How do you get like because there's so much going on, right? There's so much to take in, there's so much to learn, there's so many different things you can do. You can have, just hearing about I've just pretty much stuck to the mainline story for the first time ever.
mm-hmm,
Probably because I don't have that map system, the way that like that pulls my brain away, like, oh, I have to go discover that location. Oh, I have to discover that location. But I think, like that part of what they want you to do is to be texting your buddies and be, like, all right, dude, I just came across this, and you're like, wait, what? How do you do that? How did that come across?
Yeah.
Right? How do I not be over encumbered all the time while I'm exploring these planets? um, Quick note: you should go to your ship's inventory. As long as you're within 250 meters of your ship, you can actually exchange, uh, inventory between your ship cargo and your character.
Mhm.
But but yeah, so I think that's what it it's trying to do. And I've kind of, I think, had a negative tone here for my initial in
No.
conversation so far. I only expect things to get better at this point, because the frustrations, the struggles with this game are just right up front in your face, right from the start, right at the beginning.
Mhm.
And as you keep playing, like I'm still, it still had, at hour 6, 7, it got the hook, right? Like you got through the tutorial, you got
Mhm.
like, okay, it's not slow anymore. I'm doing what I want to do. And then that's when it starts pulling you forward a little bit. And you're still like, "Oh, I still have to deal with this, some of this bad UI.
Yeah.
I don't like the inventory management system. I feel like I have to dive through too many tiers of menus to get to what I want to get to. And
Mhm.
there's all kinds of these things, but I think as you keep playing, as I keep playing, I'm gonna like, you're hearing all these other things that everybody else is doing, and it's just like, I can't even. But something, I'm gonna find something for me in this
Yeah.
game, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna lean into that. I think you found some of that, maybe more than I have
Mhm.
so far. Maybe I need to branch away from that, but I'm kind of so like. I will say something that I think is great about this is, I think, the best main story, main
Yeah.
quest line
Yeah.
that
It's the
Bethesda
most
games have,
interesting,
because
right?
usually, yeah, absolutely, the main quest lines in Bethesda games are typically just like there to like keep the game together,
Mhm.
like
They're
almost,
bookends.
and
They're
they're
just
not,
bookends. They're not
but
like a true
yeah, they're
yeah,
bookends. Yes, exactly. Because the side quests are really where the
the meat.
games thrive
Yeah.
past the, yeah,
Um,
and the
s-
exploration.
so to trying to stick to our impressions format, even though we're gushing about the game, let's
Yep.
just jump back to let's talk about character customization and then jump into graphics and performance, and then we'll dive more into story and gameplay, which I think we'll have a lot to talk about there. So character customization, what did you think? Give us a quick rundown for the viewers of like the things you're doing when you create your character, and I'll do the same, and then we'll jump over to graphics and performance.
Yeah, so going into these games expecting that it's going to be several hours to get through the tutorial, to learn the system and stuff. I play almost exclusively in first person in these games. So I'm like, I don't really care what my character looks like. I went through a couple of random things, looks good enough. And
Mhm.
then I spend my time on, you got to pick your, like, there's two things that you pick up. You pick like kind of your class that gives you three skills,
Mhm.
and then you pick three unique traits or something that, the skills are something that you get as you level up. So you could
Mhm.
get more of these skills.
Yeah, so
If you pick a class that
it's a
does,
starting point, right, for the
yeah, it's
skill
just
tree.
three starting skills, right? And but you can get the other skills from the other classes or whatever, as you level up if you want.
Mhm.
And then the other one is three unique traits that you can pick, up to three unique traits, that are, it gives you a little bit of bonus, but also gives you something that, like, draws a little bit of a drawback. And
Can you give us some examples of
certain
what
part,
those are? Like, give the viewers
yeah.
some
So
example.
yeah, that's, so the traits that are unique that you don't can't get later on. One is the it's not called the adoring fan, but it's effectively the adoring fan from, I believe, Oblivion, where you get this guy that just like absolutely loves you or whatever, and he gushes about you all the time, and he gives you things and stuff throughout the game. But
He's your hype man.
the
He's
the
your hype
the
man, right?
the drawback is that he's literally just constantly just bombarding you with dialogue, and you're like, oh my gosh, dude, just shut up. uh that was one I picked. I was like, the the and then there's one that's like a dream home that I picked, that you get a house, you get a nice big house or whatever in the game, but the drawback is you have like some hundred some thousand credit mortgage that you have to pay on weekly, and it collects interest, and so you have to like pay off a loan. You're like, oh, and then another one is, I think one you picked was, the you can go visit your parents or something, but you have to give them 2% of your weekly income.
Yep.
Uh, So some interesting things, and then there's uh I don't know, a few others. The problem that I had with some of these is like I was reading them and I was like, I have no idea what this does in the context of the game. This is something I'll
Yeah.
have to like, if I play this a second time or if I start this game over at any point, then I'll have a little more idea of what they mean. But I was just like, I'm just gonna pick something that doesn't sound. I picked the Adoring Fan because it didn't sound terrible. I took a chance on the Dream Home,
Hmm.
and then there's Alien DNA or something I picked that, and I did pick that based off of experience with previous Bethesda games.
Yeah.
The Alien DNA gives you I think a little more health or something like that, and then health items give you less health points back. And I was
Yeah.
just like, well, I've always had an abundance of these of stim packs and Fallout or whatever things that I need to heal.
Think again.
Uh, yeah,
In this
yeah,
game, anyway.
I've been rather limited in this game. I've ran out of the med packs, which is the equivalent to the stim packs in Fallout,
Yeah.
uh, uh, multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this, but yeah,
The
what are your thoughts on the character customization? You probably did a little more than I did.
Yeah, I think I probably did. It matters more to me because I play in third person a lot of times. So I want to make sure I look cool and stuff. Name my guy Kronos. He's got like a buzz cut, like mohawk thing. So the background type thing that you talked about, where you get your skill points, your starting skill points, it gives you an idea of like who your character is. That's the whole point. What are you role playing, right? So you could pick Bounty Hunter, which is like your Han Solo, and you start with like extra skills or at least a head start in like piloting and jetpack and that type of thing. I chose to go with Cyber Runner, so which is like a very cyberpunk approach where like I've done good stuff, I've done bad stuff. I'm kind of from the streets, but I hack things, that type of thing, right? So just a cyber runner, like I'm against the corporations type of deal. And for the traits, you mentioned the family one. It's like you're spot on when you say, I don't know how this is going to play out in the game, and maybe that's the design choice that they wanted. Like they wanted you to like take a leap of faith on these. But also I'm like, okay, so I gotta send 2% of my monthly income to my parents in game, and what, I just get to visit them? Like, is there gonna be some type of payoff? And as a listener, maybe you do know this. I choose not to look this stuff up. I want to experience it
Right.
myself. But the other one that I took was like Neon City Street Rat. So like basically I grew up on the streets of Neon City, which is like your cyberpunk type city in the game. And man, I took one more and I can't remember what it was. I think I took Wanted. So like bounties get put on your head and random bounty hunters come
Mhm.
up to kill you or take you in. And you can get some rewards from that, but also like they're just showing up all the time, right? So there's that positive and negative for each one. And the other one, like they get super wacky too, right? Like some of them you can join the religions or the cults or whatever early on, like right away with these traits, but there's drawbacks to it. And then the one was like something about you had to keep jumping. Like,
Well, it was grav jumping,
okay,
which yeah,
yeah,
because I read it as jumping at first, and then once I started playing the game, I was like, oh, grav jumping like through with my
yeah,
spaceship.
yeah.
I have to be jumping from solar system to solar system or planet to planet or whatever, and constantly grav jumping, I think is what it was. I think, but yeah,
And it says it's
that like
almost
that's
like an addiction. You have to keep doing it. So it's like, what does that
right.
mean? Like you can only stay on each planet for so long? Like I don't
Yeah,
get it. So I
not
would love
having
to know
any
more
idea
about
what
that.
that was in the context.
Right.
Yeah, I almost wish the unique traits that you can get later on in the game were class specific as far as like, like, okay, if you want to be, I picked industrialist, which was like persuasion and lock picking
Mm-hmm.
and something else, which I actually ended up being like the stuff I played, like the way I play.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just like, oh, if I would have picked something else, I could have just added these when I leveled up anyway. So it would have been kind of cool to like, I would rather if that had some of the unique traits of like the class of like how you're gonna play, not like some unique thing that it doesn't really tie to me. Like, I guess maybe it plays into role playing, but like it doesn't play the way you're gonna play the
Yeah.
game so much as
Yeah.
it like is the your surrounding environment. I would have liked to have like, okay, like I want to lean into I always love lock picking and Bethesda games, and honestly, this is absolutely the best lock picking system Bethesda's ever had. It's
100%.
it's it's an actual solvable puzzle that's like very fun and like you have to analyze it and stuff. It's
Yeah.
great.
It's not luck
Uh,
based.
but right, exactly. So it's just like it would have been cool. It's like you can have this a bonus in this type of thing that you're going to do, or this type of thing you're going to do, but there's a drawback in something else, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can lift a lot of weights, but you're or you can carry a lot of capacity around, but your health is lower or something, or you just, I would rather have that. So it's just like, okay, how are you going to play like this? Like choose how you're going to play. And I feel like that's how it's been when you
Mm-hmm.
pick a class in Skyrim or probably Baldur's Gate, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
is type of character you want to be, less so, more so the type of character you want to be is like what you play, and less so your backstory. And that kind of thing is what this feels like, oh, you have a dream home and stuff, and that's more like backstory that doesn't have anything to do with the personality or the character. It's the role play of the character.
Right, right. So we talked about story already. I don't think we need to go too much of a deep dive there. It's just kind of exploring the what does life mean? Are we the only ones out there? There's these magic kind of artifacts that this group called Constellation, it's like the Illuminati in a way, is like collecting, and you get brought into this group through the story, and you're trying to collect these artifacts. And I think that's our impression so far on that. Let's quickly talk graphics and performance before we jump into some of the other stuff like music and atmosphere. Just brief thoughts on the graphics and performance on the Series X.
So I think it's the most beautiful looking Bethesda game easily ever. I have problems with it the way visually though, like uh, you interact with so much of the environment. I would say you interact with less of the environment in Starfield than any Bethesda game previously. Where
Mm-hmm.
in Fallout, if there's a desk, you open the desk and you can loot the desk. You can't do that in this game. Lockers, I don't like the way you loot lock. You can loot lockers and stuff, but you have to like open the locker and like pick it up off the shelf, as opposed to just like having the what's in there and just being able to like select all whatever and just pull it off
So you're
or
so you're
not.
not happy with the graphically how things are displayed, but ultimately from the game design decision to make.
Visually, it's beautiful,
Yeah,
right?
but
Like
they
when I
split
look
all
at
the
it, I'm like,
items
wow.
everywhere. Like if you want all the stuff, you have to literally point at it and click it and grab it, and it's hard to do that.
And it's hard because it's so detailed or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Everything like is like you know there was just such like high contrast or whatever, like everything in like say fall or previous Bethesda
Yeah,
games. It's like, okay, I see exactly that hard outline of that object or whatever, and
yeah,
I can kind of see it there. Where it's just like, it's like these tiny like little like a bottle cap is just big and significant in Fallout or something, where it's a lot easier to see. Where it's maybe not like, oh, is that a like. And it's so there's such a variety of like different items and stuff in here, and it's just like, is that something I can pick it up?
right.
And you can't pick up, like I said, as nearly as
Yeah, so
much.
you think the game
So
is by Bethesda standards more realistic, but to a fault in a way. So it looks great, but maybe not as playable. What is your thoughts on the frame rate and maybe the voice acting and the character models? Because you're having those face up interactions all the time. What do you think of those?
the deadpan Bethesda
Yeah,
characters that
yeah,
are just like stare at you while they're talking.
yeah.
It's to me, it's that's like nostalgic. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. I'm drawn back. I am playing a Bethesda game,
Hmm.
But so there's it's almost a charm for me at this point because it's like I've experienced that so many times in
Yeah.
games I love,
It
but it looks
feels it
terrible. I
feels
mean,
cozy. It feels terrible. Looks
yeah,
cozy,
right.
feels terrible.
Okay, so basically, when Bethesda games look beautiful, that's bad, and when they look terrible, it's great for me. But yeah, no. So that's kind of thought. The performance, I mean, easily the best performing game. This is early access, right? So this isn't even launch state now,
Mm.
and it's performing better than any Bethesda game has at launch.
Yeah, so you're pretty
Yeah,
happy with it, right? The graphics and performance. I would
yeah.
say
Overall,
I would also say I have no major complaints. I mean,
yeah.
I've seen a minor number of visual bugs, if any. Same old charm, like you said, from the characters. Like, if you like Bethesda games, you like Fallout, Skyrim. This is more the same, but they not redid the engine, but the creation engine. Like this is like 4.0 at this point or something. They did the next iteration of this. The stuff looks good. I know there was some issues with some of the HDR, like it's not being presented correctly. So keep an eye out for that and any hot fixes that come, and maybe we'll change our thoughts on that, and the game will look even better. But the worlds do feel a little bit barren sometimes. Like at least New Atlantis, sometimes you're in there and you're like, okay, this is kind of how Cyberpunk felt at launch, like where there was a lot of
Yes,
issues.
yeah.
So, and I don't want to say I give Bethesda a pass, but not to dive too deep into it, so we can go to the next topic. But it's a Bethesda game. It's doing a lot of things, and I give it a pass a little bit in that regard of like, okay, I get it. Like this is what I come to expect from Bethesda game. You're letting me do a million things. You're not going so deep on the population density of a city and like the uniqueness of it necessarily. So overall, graphics performance, no major issues or complaints for me on Series X. Very pleased with how it's playing. Nothing's holding me back from playing. And yeah, I look forward to diving into it more from that regard.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
you do you want to jump over to music, atmosphere, and world building? Just brief thoughts on that.
Yeah. Uh, music so far is pretty cool. I think I was telling you because we were just in party chat the night, we started playing. I was like, it feels like a cross between not the like the Fallout radio, but like the Fallout like actual music, the for the game,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like a cross between that and like Star Wars music to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
And which in a great way. Like I think the music's good. Bethesda's good at doing soundtracks. They're good at music in their games. And it's never anything that's like super imposing or anything. Sometimes there's some iconic soundtracks like that Skyrim soundtrack, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
opening, song in Skyrim is very like almost iconic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great for the music. The atmosphere, I think we kind of touched on this a little bit. It feels a little bit dead at times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it, and I guess this is more world building. I don't feel as immersed far as I have in previous Bethesda games, but I really do expect it to just get going. I think there's just so much going on that it's just going to take a little bit longer for it to happen,
Mm-hmm.
which, being 16 hours in, that may not be for some people, right? And some people might not want to have to play 20 hours of a game for it to really start sinking in, right?
Mm-hmm.
For it to really start grabbing, having that for me, I know it's going to have its payoff. I expect it to. I can see it starting to happen more and more. The more I play, and I just want to keep playing, and because I can just see it. I feel like I'm just on the verge of it, and I feel like in the next probably 5 or so hours of gameplay, I will start feeling that like I'm participating in this massive at this point, galaxy, I would say massive world, but of being the character that I want to be and having that sandbox that I want to, that I want to play in.
Right, right. That makes sense. Yeah, the music, I think you hit it spot on. It's kind of got that grand orchestral, but mix of Star Wars. Like, there's a moment at the beginning of the game. It's like almost an homage to Fallout. It's kind of got hints of the Fallout theme when you come out of the vault. There's a similar
Mhm.
moment in this game. Just thought it was pretty cool. The atmosphere is great, man. I think they nailed the sci-fi atmosphere. All these different things you can do and travel and see people and different. There's miners and belters and little bits and pieces from all those different types of sci-fi like Firefly and the Expanse and stuff. So all that's coalesced into this game, which is really cool. And I would agree with you on the world building is that they could do a little bit more, I think, but I think it'll ramp up as you get further into the game for sure. So let's jump over to I think maybe the bulk of our stuff we've talked about a lot because it's hard not to talk about it, but just gameplay and pacing and like, you know, for the viewers maybe not familiar with a type of series like this or this game in particular, like what is the gameplay like, what are the things you're doing, and then give us a couple standout moments for the game before we start to wrap up.
Yeah, gameplay for me, like I said, I've been sticking kind of the main story, so I think it might be different than if you go off on the side stuff. It might be a little bit different. I've
Mm-hmm.
just been kind of going for main quest, collecting those artifacts, but as far as the like the gunplay and stuff like that, again, I'm playing a little differently. There's been a lot of actually praise for the gunplay
Mm-hmm.
for a Bethesda game. I mean, it's not competing with Call of Duty or Destiny or something like that, but
Right.
easily the best gunplay, right? Like in a Bethesda game. Fallout 4 was a big leap forward from previous games, and then this I think is just another leap yet. Having said that, I've been doing a melee build, and I
Oh.
just slowly started doing. So it's like, oh, I heard the gunplay is fantastic. That means I'm gonna go grab an
You're like,
axe,
not for
and
me. You ran straight the other way.
yeah, but which is the first time I've ever really done that, and I'm slowly moving into a um I'm using like a long range, one shot or non-automatic weapon type of approach to where it's like I have that for some ranged attacking and and then but I think I'm going to use the melee instead of like shotguns or something that I previously in previous Bethesda. I guess really in Skyrim I would be melee and an archer, and that's really the approach I'm taking here. I guess
Right.
it'd be the equivalent.
That makes sense.
I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going on that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the scanner. The scanner has some cool features. To me, it feels a little clunky at times in terms of like I just feel like it takes up too much of the screen or something, and I just like it seems super important to be using it a lot. Like I almost want to walk around with it all the time, but when I do, I feel like I'm like closing some of the like my visual like
Mm-hmm.
the visuals off. So
You're
it
saying,
has
so you're
some
saying
pretty
the
cool.
field of view, right? Kind of the
Yes,
field of
yeah.
view is like shrunk when you're using the scanner and stuff.
Yep. Pacing starts out a little slow as you would expect, like I said, for this game, but
Mm-hmm.
it's starting to pick up, and I think it's moving at a good pace now that now that it's picking up. So I'll bounce that to you. You want to
Yeah,
talk about it a little bit?
yeah, the gameplay's it's what you come expect from a Bethesda game. Like you can do anything and everything you want to, right? So um the problem that I think people have, and me a little bit, not so much, but that it's a mile wide and a foot deep, right, in some areas. So you can do so many different things. There's so many systems in this game: the bounty hunting, the story, the space flight, the combat, the exploring. The you can research things, you can build things. There's outposts. You can set up an outpost across the galaxy, across solar systems, and you can set up like currency, like running currency through. There's contraband you could smuggle. There are so many things that just by nature of doing all those, that some of them are not as deep as you would expect. Or maybe somebody's playing another game and they say, like, wow, this game's so deep in what it does, but it's only doing.
Elite Dangerous in the
Yeah, for.
in the space combat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So it only Elite Dangerous does only A and B, whereas Bethesda and Starfield are doing A, B, C, X, Y, Z, right? So A and B may
yeah.
not be
You're
as
almost
deep.
getting like a sampler platter
Hmm.
or a buffet, a buffet of like you can go pick a little bit of this, pick a little bit of that, but you're not getting like a full on like full course or whatever,
Yeah,
like a
totally.
catered meal, right? Like, because you're just kind of getting to like, okay, you can go pick and choose what you want to eat, what you want to pick at. And,
Yeah.
you can do just about anything you want. You can have just about anything you want, but like, it's just going to be, you're not going to be able to go deep into any one thing. Yeah, that makes sense.
100%. And
I
the
would agree with that.
the gameplay's good. The gunplay's much improved. I'm using guns for my playthrough mainly, and I do switch from the third person to the first person, which I find really fun, especially when you're exploring. You get the different gravity levels on different planets. The guns sound different in different atmospheres. I think that's really cool. I'm following the main story a little bit, but I'm branching off and doing other things, which I'll talk about in my standout moments for the game here soon. But yeah, the space combat is not the best so far, but I think maybe it'll improve as you level up the perks. I've been told by some other friends that, like, hey, you really need to get these skills up to make the space combat more fun. Plus, we just have the starter ship, right? This is Impressions. We've played for 15 hours. There are so many ships you can buy or modify. I just modified my starter ship a little bit, and I was
Mhm.
like blown away by the options that you could have. And each planet, like each hub planet, gives you different options of for your ships. Like they sell different parts because different companies thrive in different parts of the solar system. Like it's crazy the amount of stuff you can do. There's ships like we could sell our ship for like 30,000 credits. There's ships that cost 300,000 credits. Like it's nuts, right? So yeah, the gameplay so far pretty good. Pacing a little slow to start, but then you really get to dive in and the galaxy is your oyster, so to speak. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Um, I want to move on to we're just trying to move along here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're good.
So we'll move on to game comps. Obviously Bethesda games we talked about, but Mass Effect I think is a big one that gets compared to.
Hmm.
I haven't played Mass Effect. So what are your thoughts? I mean, is Mass Effect one of the closer comps that you could think of?
No, yes and no. Um, Mass Effect leans more towards that old school Bioware style, and that's just not Bethesda's style, right? It's a unique beast compared to this. I get the comparisons because of the space and like traversing with your crew on the ship, like that. Those are fair comparisons, I think. But it is apples to oranges again, as we talked about in
Yeah.
the top of the show, like comparing games. But I wouldn't put them in the same bucket necessarily. Maybe in the same room in terms of talking about them and some of the the differences and the similarities. But yeah, Mass Effect's
Yeah.
not jumping to my mind right away.
Okay. I'll say you mentioned Cyberpunk, like a little bit and in a certain light, but I would say take the setting out, right?
Hmm.
And to me, that would be I would say the next closest comp for a game that I've played. Uh,
I would agree with that.
Again, you got to take the setting out, but just kind of that the gameplay, yeah, you kind of dive into what you want to dive into. You can go, you could be this, uh, you kind of can choose what you be and dive into it if you want to.
Hmm.
And that's what I remember from Cyberpunk, and that's kind of what I feel. I almost feel like it's more like Cyberpunk, in that sense than Bethesda games in some ways, previous Bethesda games.
I would agree.
And
It's like they merged the two in a way, those two design
yeah,
styles. So, what are before we go to a standout moment from each of us, what are your hopes for the rest of the game as you continue to play and work towards a full review?
yeah. So yeah, I didn't dive too much into this, but the dialogue options and the persuasion, I think there's been some mixed results. I love it. I think it's really cool, the
Hmm.
way that they handle the dialogue and the persuasions. I really wish they had chat log,
Hmm.
but through so you could go skim through what the conversation has been. Like I have a baby crying or something like that, and I miss what happened. I'm like, wait, what did I miss?
Hmm.
Um, but uh, but the dialogue options are, I'm sorry, what was our question? The expectations of
No, just your hopes for the rest of the game. But you were speaking to
oh,
the
so that's it.
yep.
So yeah, um yeah, so I'm hoping that I can dive into that. I've succeeded in a lot of these dialogue things, and diving into the skill tree. So as I lean into those things, my hopes for the game are that I start feeling that, like, that cozy feel that I get with Bethesda games,
Yeah.
and that I just start feeling like I'm living in that world, that I'm just kind of, I almost want a grittiness, right? Like it's a little bit clunky in ways, but it's not gritty. I don't
Hmm.
know if that makes sense, but there's just a jump in, and I just I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm doing it. I feel like I'm doing the thing,
Yeah.
and um that's I guess what I hope to start feeling
So,
from this
so you're
game.
waiting to fall in love with the game, right? You're highly interested in this
Yeah.
game. You're on a second and third date, but you're not
Yeah,
in
that's
love
right.
yet.
That's right. I see a lot of promise, but
Yeah.
like not wife material yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So the just to talk on the social system, that persuasion system, for people that haven't played the game and you're like, well, how is this different? So normally, like, you just have a persuasion check and it's like, hey, did I fail or did I pass, right? And in this, it's not like that. So depending on the difficulty of the persuasion check, you have an ongoing dialogue. You're trying to convince this person. So it gives you like these little blocks and difficulty tier. So a conversation where I'm trying to persuade Evan may require me to fill up 5 total blocks, and I get conversation options that are like +1 block, +3 block, +5 block. But the chance of succeeding at like a +5 is much harder than a +1, right? So you got to kind of have this
Mhm.
conversation. And I could say, oh, I'll do a +1, for example. Oh, come on, Evan. Like, it's really not that bad. You can just let me borrow your car. You know what I mean? Let me come on, right? We're friends.
Right,
And Evan
right.
might like, oh yeah, you're right. And so that gives me 1 block. And then you only have so many turns of dialogue to do this. So it's its own mini game. And then I could just go full hog and be like, you know what? You remember that time that I let you do this and that, and you have to let me borrow your car. And maybe that check fails. Yeah,
Right.
or maybe it passes and you're like, you know what, you're right. I do owe you. Boom, there you go. So it's this ongoing back and forth cat and mouse of like trying to convince this person. It feels much more organic and real than just a simple you pass, you failed.
Yeah, it's fun. I really like the back and forth that it has.
Yep. So my hopes for this game, similar to you, like I want to love this game. I think I already am. I just want to get lost in this world and go around and jump to different solar system. I really want to know about the main story, which speaks to the promise of this story so far, at least in my perspective that I've seen in my 15 hours with the game. So that's what I'm looking for. It's just more of the same. Maybe the ship combat gets a little bit better. Maybe some fixes and updates that improve the game from Bethesda based on fan feedback. And then I'll be curious to see like what the DLC really contains in that regard. So as we start to wrap up, I want to get a standout moment from you, and then I'll give my standout moment, and then we'll close out the show.
Honestly, that first dialogue, now we're talking about that first persuasion check that, and then it broke out into that dialogue option, would be the standout moment. And then next to that would be traversing from solar system to solar system.
Right. For me, I think I've already texted you about this. I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but basically, you can go to jail in this game for doing bad things. And I found some contraband worth a lot of money. I said, hey, I'm going to take this back home to this planet, sell it. As I popped into orbit, my ship was scanned. I failed the check. And I tried to talk my way out of it. I wasn't going to shoot my way out of it. So I was like, all right, I got to go to jail. I wake up in an interrogation room, not a jail. And all of a sudden, now I'm working undercover for the United Colonies. Insanity, right? Like, that's my standout moment. I'm like, what? You can even do this? Like, nuts.
Bro, spoilers, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so it doesn't there's so many different things you can do in this game.
yeah.
That's the gist, is like I found a way to
And
go
that's
undercover.
where Bethesda shines, right? A lot
Right.
of times. That's the one of the honestly the places that Bethesda shines. When you get into something like that, I haven't had that side. I haven't pursued those side quests yet
Right.
dive into something like
Yeah,
that.
and I
So
didn't even
I
pursue this. It just happened to me. I'm just playing the
right,
game,
right, right.
existing and doing things, and it just happened.
True.
So that blew
Yeah.
my mind and reminded me why I love Bethesda games, and I hope there's more of that in here for me and for everybody else. So yeah, so that is Starfield by Bethesda Game Studios on Xbox and PC and Game Pass, and otherwise it's $70, and you have that DLC pack you can buy as well. That's not out yet, but coming soon. So just super quick question for you before we start to close out: have your Game of the Year thoughts changed at all after playing this?
Yes.
That-
Uh, I yeah, I was going in thinking Starfield maybe has a good chance. I think it'll be nominated, but I don't expect it to hold up. Just I mean, really, if anything, how slow it takes to get going.
okay, so if you had to rank 1, 2, 3, what's the 1, 2, 3 rank right now? Game of the Year.
Uh, uh, well, Zelda for me definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what the noise that Baldur's Gate,
Mm-hmm.
that's right there. I mean, those are really close 1, 2. I think
Mm-hmm.
at this point, and then Sea of Stars. No, uh, I guess it's probably Starfield for me, but I think Spider-Man has a good chance of coming in on there.
Ooh, okay. So I'm gonna say for my top three, Baldur's Gate I think is gonna win. I think Zelda will be second. And now I'm also questioning whether Starfield, as much as I love it, does it hit the number three spot or not? Spider-Man 2 could definitely step in there. And Dark Horse is Super Mario Wonder. Like, don't underestimate Nintendo and that they can come in here, not win Game of the Year with that Mario game, but be in talks and maybe have two games nominated there.
Yeah, I say no way it's beating Zelda, right? Like
Right.
that's like if a Nintendo game wins this year, it's not Mario Wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely let us know your thoughts on that in the appropriate discussion places, which I'll talk about right now with a little plug. So we just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to listen to Remote Play. You could be spending your time anywhere else, but you're listening to us instead. And for that, we thank you. If you like our content, be sure to like and subscribe. Our show is on YouTube and all major podcasting platforms. Between our bi-weekly episodes that are coming out on Wednesdays, you can also catch us on socials at Remote Play Gaming and join our Discord to continue the conversation. Links for those are all in the description below. And until next time, thank you and keep gaming.